On the morning of June 30th, 1908, in a remote region of Siberia, something unusual happened. The sky changed. There was no warning, no countdown, no sign that anything was coming. Then suddenly, a bright flash. So bright. People described it as brighter than the sun. Moments later, an explosion. Not from the ground, not from beneath the earth, but from above. The blast came from the sky. A powerful shock wave rushed outward across the forest. Trees were knocked down over an area of more than 2,000 square kilometers, over 80 million trees, flattened, not randomly, but in a pattern, all pointing outward and as if something had exploded in the air above them. But when scientists later investigated, they found something strange. There was no crater, no impact point, no object buried in the ground, nothing to explain how such destruction could happen. For years, the Tunguska event remained a mystery. People who were miles away reported being thrown off their feet, windows shattered, hundreds of kilometers away. Some said they felt intense heat, as if the air itself had caught fire. Others described a roaring sound, like thunder, but continuous, lasting several moments, and then silence. In the days that followed, the sky behaved strangely. At night, the horizon glowed, bright enough that people could read without artificial light. Something had changed, but no one fully understood what. It wasn't until decades later that scientists began to form a clearer picture. What likely happened was not an impact, but an airburst. A space object entered Earth's atmosphere, traveling at extremely high speed. As it descended, the pressure around it increased, the heat intensified, and at a certain point, it could no longer hold together. It broke apart, releasing a massive amount of energy all at once, not on the ground, but in the air. That explosion created a shock wave that traveled downward and outward, flattening everything below it. That's why the trees fell the way they did. That's why there was no crater, because the object never reached the surface. It exploded before impact. The energy released has been estimated to be equivalent to a large-scale explosion, all above the Earth. Now pause and think about that. An object from space entered the atmosphere and released that much energy without ever touching the ground, and it happened without warning. Today, we have advanced systems. We track near-Earth objects, we monitor the skies, we predict trajectories, but not everything is detected. Some objects are too small, some approach from angles that are difficult to observe, and some are only discovered after they have already passed. The Tunguska event happened over a remote forest, far from cities, far from dense populations. But imagine if the same event occurred today, not over Siberia, but over a major city, over infrastructure, over systems we depend on. The impact would be very different, not because the object is larger, but because our world is more connected, more exposed, more dependent on stability. So the real question is not whether it can happen, because it already has. The question is, how often do events like this occur without being noticed? How many objects pass through our atmosphere, breaking apart silently, far from where anyone is looking? And how many come close before we even realize they were there? Because space is not empty, and the boundary between space and Earth is not as distant as it feels. Sometimes it only takes one object moving fast enough to change everything. without warning, without sound, without time to react. Just a flash in the sky. And then everything changes.